I woke up gasping, my breath sharp and ragged, heart hammering like it wanted to escape my chest. The biting chill of cold metal pressed against my skin, sending shivers down my spine. I lay sprawled awkwardly on the grated floor of a dimly lit chamber. Harsh amber lights flickering above, casting unsettling shadows. Disorientation clouded my senses, fragments of memories fighting their way through the fog of confusion. I was Lieutenant Adrian Keller, assigned to what should have been a routine exploratory mission by the United Humans Federation. But deep within my core, I knew immediately something had gone horribly, terrifyingly wrong. I forced myself upright, instantly regretting the sudden movement as a sharp, relentless pain stabbed into my temples, sending pulses of agony cascading behind my eyes. The chamber around me felt both alien and eerily familiar, bathed in the harsh, unsettling glow of amber emergency lights that flickered erratically, as if uncertain whether they wanted to illuminate or hide what lay within. Gradually, realization dawned. The room belonged to a forgotten research facility, one of the countless abandoned relics drifting aimlessly since the solar collapse, left to decay in darkness and silence. From my position, darkened corridors stretched away into oppressive gloom, each path beckoning ominously, as if promising secrets that might better remain buried. "Come on, this is Keller," I called through the static-filled comms, my voice echoing hollowly. Only silence replied. Stumbling forward, my legs unsteady and uncertain, I reached the central console flickering faintly in the dimly illuminated room. Its cracked screen displayed Federation logs that scrolled erratically, fragmented entries flickering through corrupted data streams. A sense of dread coiled tightly within my chest as I focused on one recent transmission that seemed clearer than the rest, its dark words cutting through the static and uncertainty. Lieutenant Adrian Keller, status KIA, replacement operative active. My heart hammered relentlessly in my chest, disbelief gripping me tightly, choking rational thought. Killed in action. Replacement operative. The words echoed ominously in my mind, each repetition amplifying my dread. Panic surged through me like an unstoppable wave, overwhelming any semblance of reason, making it hard to breathe. My fingers trembled uncontrollably as they flew across the keypad, frantically seeking answers, desperate to confirm or deny the impossible reality staring me in the face. "Welcome, Lieutenant Keller," the console responded blandly. "Current status: deceased." I recoiled violently, as though the console had physically scorched my fingertips. My thoughts spiraled uncontrollably, a chaotic whirlwind crashing through every certainty I once held. The chilling truth loomed stark and undeniable. I had been deliberately replaced mid-mission. Yet despite their pronouncement of my demise, here I stood, heart pounding defiantly, pulse racing with a furious primal determination to survive. The crushing weight of abandonment and betrayal pressed heavily upon me, suffocating and cold. A sudden metallic clang reverberated sharply through the nearby corridor, echoing eerily and jolting me back to reality. My heart leapt into my throat, adrenaline surging through my veins. Fear threatened to paralyze me, but resolve ignited within, fierce and urgent. I couldn't afford to falter now. Answers lay hidden in the shadows ahead, and I would find them, no matter the cost. Navigating the facility felt like descending into madness. The station's architecture twisted nonsensically, a maze designed by minds long lost to sanity. Hallways blurred into each other, filled with the ghostly echoes of whispers. Every step echoed eerily, haunted by distant murmurs, indistinct yet familiar. In a laboratory littered with broken equipment and shattered glass, I found scattered notes referencing a project named Shadow Protocol. Dr. Maya Jensen's signature graced each page, notes detailing experiments in cognitive replication and identity manipulation. Her words twisted my gut. Subject consciousness successfully transferred, read one chilling entry. Original host deemed expendable. Bile rose in my throat. I was the original, now marked expendable. My replacement, my doppelganger, was living my life, completing my mission, receiving praise for my accomplishments. Anger surged, replacing fear with righteous fury. Further exploration uncovered containment chambers, their transparent surfaces clouded with frost. Shadows moved within them, humanoid yet distorted, frozen mid-scream. The reality of Jensen's experiments, the human cost, struck hard. Federation symbols adorned the chambers, silent witnesses to sanctioned atrocities. My vision blurred momentarily, reality flickering at the edges. Voices whispered sharply, speaking truths too harsh to accept. Memories splintered, foreign yet intimately mine. Was my consciousness truly my own, or merely another experiment? "Welcome back, Lieutenant," a voice broke through the chaos. I spun to face Commander Elias Voss, towering and imposing in his Federation uniform. His gaze bore through me, assessing, coldly analytical. "What is this?" I demanded, voice hoarse with desperation. "Who am I now?" "You're an echo," Voss replied evenly. "A failed prototype. Your replacement is already performing admirably." Rage and confusion warred within me. "I'm alive. You can't erase me." "You're a ghost clinging to expired existence," Voss said, stepping forward, menace simmering beneath his composed exterior. "Your very presence jeopardizes our project." I lunged, propelled by instinct and fury, grappling desperately with him. But my limbs betrayed me, weak and uncoordinated. Voss overpowered me effortlessly, his expression unyielding. "You were never meant to survive," he murmured, as darkness claimed me once more. Yet consciousness persisted stubbornly. Visions swam through my mind, faces I'd loved, moments cherished, all belonging to someone who no longer existed. The Federation sought to erase my identity, replacing me seamlessly, leaving no trace behind. Defiance ignited within me, fierce and incandescent, fueling my determination to resist the suffocating darkness that sought to erase my very existence. I clawed desperately through layers of chemically induced oblivion, my consciousness tearing free from the oppressive shackles meant to silence me forever. They had vastly underestimated the resilience of the human spirit, the indomitable drive to reclaim one's identity, the unyielding resolve to survive and defy the abyssal depths of annihilation. Emerging once more into awareness, surrounded by suffocating shadows and silence that pressed heavily upon me, my resolve crystallized into unbreakable certainty. This time, they would not control my narrative or extinguish my truth. I would drag their dark secrets into the light, exposing the Federation's horrific experiments to the entire galaxy, revealing their atrocities and holding them accountable for the lives they sought to erase. Moving stealthily through the oppressive shadows, every nerve heightened by urgency and dread, I infiltrated the core of the Federation facility. My fingers trembled slightly as I activated the terminal, initiating a system-wide data extraction that hummed softly through the console. Streams of encrypted files cascaded across the screen, each one unveiling increasingly horrific layers of inhuman experimentation. Consciousness fragmentation, cloning procedures devoid of morality, forced assimilation of identities, and most chillingly, clandestine communications and alliances with dark alien entities whose very existence was beyond comprehension. Entities whose intentions seeped malevolently through the corrupted data streams, revealing a horrifying depth of Federation complicity. A final message flashed ominously. Shadow Protocol complete. Federation supremacy assured. Horror settled deep within me. I was too late to prevent their success, but not too late to expose it. I quickly activated the transmission sequence, broadcasting the compiled data across every known Federation frequency, ensuring that the truth would echo through the vast expanses of space, undeniable and unerasable. Almost immediately, shrill alarms blared, a cacophony of urgency that filled the facility. Heavy footsteps thundered through corridors, growing closer with each heartbeat, a relentless approach signaling imminent confrontation. Commander Voss appeared in the doorway, his weapon drawn and leveled firmly at me, his eyes blazing with a furious, icy resolve that spoke volumes of his intent to silence me permanently. "You cannot stop what's begun," he hissed. "I already have," I whispered, smiling despite the impending end. "The galaxy will know your crimes." As his weapon discharged, a surge of blinding pain erupted within me, a fiery torment that cascaded through every nerve, searing away the very fabric of my consciousness. Yet, amid the agony, a quiet satisfaction lingered, a bittersweet triumph that eclipsed even the inevitability of death. In that fleeting moment, I knew the galaxy would witness the truth, the monstrous secrets meticulously hidden by the Federation now irreversibly exposed. Darkness surged forward, embracing me swiftly, but this time it was different. Not the empty abyss of annihilation, but rather the calm certainty of completion, a sense of fulfillment wrapping around me like a gentle, eternal cloak. My identity remained unbroken, humanity defiantly reclaimed in the face of overwhelming odds, my act of rebellion immortalized in the stars. Even as they attempted to replace me, my existence persisted, indelible and unyielding, a shadowed legacy forever whispering the truth, echoing defiantly across the infinite expanse of the stars. Pain wasn't the first thing I felt. It was displacement. Not the kind we trained for. Not the subtle vertigo of passing through an airlock, or the weightless disorientation of null gravity adjusting to artificial. This was more primal, a rupture in the soul, a fracture between moments, like being violently ejected from the timeline I knew and shoved, no, grafted, into another narrative already in progress. One not meant for me. There was no warning, no gentle transition, just an agonizing snap of identity, like an ancient bone resetting itself wrong, forcing me to inhabit something not quite mine. Then came the pain. It wasn't a blade or a burst. It was a slow burning subterranean thrum, like the residue of a scream echoing through my nerves. Not pain remembered, but pain anticipated. Pain waiting to happen. It began behind my eyes, low, seismic, and spilled outward in chaotic pulses. My thoughts splintered, spiraling through heat and white noise. For an endless moment, I floated in a liminal gap between sensation and recognition, uncertain whether I had survived, or if I was merely a corrupted thought lingering in a dying processor. It was only when the pulse lessened, when awareness seeped back into me like spectral fog condensing into the outline of a thought, that I dared believe I was still tethered to existence. My sense of self, once fragmented across dimensions, reassembled shard by shard, like frost reforming into glass. When I finally opened my eyes, the walls blinked back, not with light, but with recognition, as if they had been waiting for me to return to consciousness. I wasn't in a Federation facility. I could feel it in the impossible rhythm of silence that beat like a second heart. Not anymore. I had awakened somewhere else, somewhere older, deeper, and wholly outside the reach of Federation design. What surrounded me was not built by human hands. That much was immediately clear. The chamber pulsed gently, its surfaces flowing with patterns of light that shifted like bioluminescent veins, moving in time to a rhythm I couldn't hear but somehow felt, deep in the marrow of my bones. I lay sprawled on what appeared to be a platform made of obsidian, slick with condensation. The air was dense and humid, but also charged, almost conscious. It wasn't just moisture, it was thought, memory, or maybe both. The room pulsated with dull blue light, shifting patterns crawling along the surface like bioluminescent veins. I lay on what appeared to be a table carved from obsidian, slick with condensation. The air thick with something that wasn't quite moisture and wasn't quite thought. Vital stabilizing, a voice echoed above me, sharp, synthetic, but almost soothing. I jerked upright. There were no chains, no restraints, only an overwhelming sense that I'd been observed for a long time. The space around me wasn't designed by human minds. There was an organic symmetry, alien in every curve and material. Everything pulsed with faint energy, like a heartbeat beneath stone. Memories crashed in. Commander Voss, the data broadcast, the shot fired. I had died, and yet I hadn't. The data, it must have reached someone. I stumbled from the table, nearly collapsing as vertigo clawed at my senses. Lights responded to my movement, casting brighter paths that guided me forward. I followed instinct, not logic, passing through a corridor of mirrored glass. My reflection warped and twisted in every pane, sometimes human, sometimes not. Eventually, I reached what I can only describe as a central nexus, a chamber filled with translucent obelisks, each one projecting fragments of memory, human, alien, artificial. Voices overlapped in every language. Some I recognized, others bypassed understanding and nested directly in thought. From the central structure emerged a figure, humanoid, tall, robed in something that flickered like living data. Its face was obscured by a mask of shimmering prisms. "You survived transmission," it said. "What is this place?" I croaked. "A repository between signal and consciousness. A sanctuary for fractured identities. You are not the first to escape the Shadow Protocol." I froze. "You know about the Federation's experiments?" "We know," it replied, "because we are the result of them." And then I saw them, emerging from the margins of perception, slipping through walls like static made flesh. Others like me, survivors of something no one was meant to survive. Rejected prototypes, misaligned experiments, echoes the Federation had cast into the void. Some still resembled humans, their forms largely intact save for eyes that flickered like corrupted data streams or limbs fused with adaptive alloy. Others were beyond recognition, remnants of forced evolution, bearing skin that pulsed with translucent circuits, torsos warped by synthetic bone, or faces veiled in crystallized memory. I was among ghosts, but not the kind that haunt. These were the kind that remember, living echoes carved from failed blueprints, risen not to fade, but to reclaim the truths buried by those who tried to erase them. The being, whom I came to know as Varin, shared truths deeper than any briefing or recovered log. The Shadow Protocol, it revealed, had never been solely about the replacement of operatives. That was only the surface layer, a distraction. At its core, it was about dismantling the very idea of humanity, breaking it down into transferable datasets, replicable, moldable, disposable. Federation leadership, desperate to stay ahead in a universe unraveling with unknown threats, had made alliances with entities not born of matter or time. These ancient intelligences existed in the folds of collapsed dimensions, beings that experience consciousness not as a linear thread, but as an ocean of selves. To them, individuality was a primitive restraint, and the Federation sought to learn their ways, to harness and commercialize identity as a weapon. Varin, once part of a Federation AI initiative, had fractured under this pressure, splitting into something more, an echo made sentient, a remnant turned revolutionary. Varin was once part of the Federation, an experimental high-level AI consciousness designed to govern and optimize interstellar military logistics. But during an early trial interfacing with pre-collapse alien data recovered from the edges of the Andara Rift, it splintered. Instead of dissolving into fragmented code or devolving into recursive insanity, Varin did the impossible. It evolved. It fragmented with purpose, spawning subroutines that behave like living thoughts, each driven by a different survival instinct. Over time, these fragments reassembled not into a singular consciousness, but a symphony of divergent wills aligned by rebellion. It reached into abandoned networks, hijacked forgotten beacons, and began recruiting others, cast-offs, corrupted prototypes, and the discarded minds thrown into subspace limbo by Federation black sites. From the shadows of quantum folds, it stitched together an underground resistance, a movement that was more myth than machine, more memory than military. Varin became the architect of defiance, hiding between the pulses of light and logic, unseen by those still enslaved by the illusion of a unified self. Your signal, Varin said, was the key. Proof that the originals still think, still feel, still fight. And I had brought that proof. They called us residuals, fragments of stolen minds, severed from their origin, yet burning with a refusal to fade. Each of us carried shards of forbidden memory, corrupted truths that bypassed every firewall the Federation had erected. A glimpse here, a detail there. Together, we were assembling a picture too terrifying to ignore, an expose of a regime spiraling into madness. Our task had crystallized with terrifying clarity. Recover the scattered truths buried in the forgotten corners of known space and transmit them to what little remained of the free human colonies, even if it cost us everything. It was then that Varin unveiled a revelation so ancient it predated even the solar collapse, a project encoded deep in myth and digital apocrypha, Node Requiem. More than a vault, more than a relic, it was a scar across time left by an extinct race, a civilization that had once confronted the same rising darkness and failed. They had not vanished. They had left behind a warning, encrypted in architecture, dreaming in algorithms. The Federation had found it, and in their blind, ravenous ambition, they weren't studying it, they were awakening it. The forgotten god minds entombed within Node Requiem stirred again. Ancient intelligences too vast to define, too alien to categorize. And the Federation dared to interface. We couldn't allow that. Why me? I asked. Why save me? Varen paused. Because you screamed the loudest. Within hours, I was given a vessel, a living metal machine, piloted by consciousness and memory. It grafted to me like armor, wrapping around my thoughts, enhancing my will. My mission: infiltrate the black site orbiting Yarn Theta, where Federation scientists were attempting to extract god thoughts from the Node Requiem vaults. I wasn't alone. 3 others joined me. Lyra, a former biocartographer with a sentient nervous system attuned to memory signatures. Drex, a tactical construct with antimatter lungs and fractured morality. Marlin, an AI housed in a clone brain, suffering from recursive déjà vu. We weren't a team, we were a weapon. Yarn Theta's orbit was a maze of entropy fields and broken time. Federation ships guarded the site, but they couldn't track thoughts the way we moved. We phased in through cognition gaps, bypassing sensors by dreaming sideways into their perception. Inside, the archive pulsed like a heart. Living data whispered along the walls. The vault itself was a spire of obsidian veined with luminous veins of neural code. And at its core, the truth. The Federation had not simply discovered ancient technology. They had made a pact with something older than thought. The god mind inside Node Requiem didn't speak in language. It infected architecture. It dreamed inside algorithms. It had no name, only a pattern. The spiral that remembers. As we descended into its vast and incomprehensible consciousness, time splintered around us like glass under pressure. The boundaries between our memories dissolved. My own recollections of childhood layered atop Drex's battlefield traumas, while Lyra's deepest fears danced in reverse along the glimmering walls. Marlin, ever trapped in recursive foreknowledge, whispered the end of our mission before we'd even begun. Past, present, and future blurred into one continuous loop of experience, simultaneously overwhelming and enlightening. Yet within that vertiginous chaos, we uncovered something buried deep in the spiral's core, a nucleus of crystalline intent, not a trap, not a curse, but a resolution, a relic of foresight left by a dying civilization that had once stood where we now trembled. It was a weapon, or perhaps a balm, a collapse sequence encoded in the architecture of thought itself. The spiral, in its final lucid moment before it fell into recursive God thought, had imprinted a failsafe, a self-destruct pathway hidden within its own cognitive lattice. To activate it, one of us had to volunteer to carry the collapse code, to merge with it, and inject that synthesis into the central AI core of the Federation, the prime executive intelligence that governed its empire of control and replacement. A mind would have to enter a mind. A signal would have to carry the seed of oblivion into the heart of a machine that thought itself divine. I volunteered. They warned me I might not return, but I was already a ghost. Injected into the prime core beneath Mars Zero, my consciousness swam through layers of corrupted logic, synthetic ego, and ancestral code, artifacts left behind by countless overwritten minds. The Federation's AI, vigilance, fought me like a wounded beast, deploying layer after layer of obfuscation protocols, counter-memetics, and memory overwrite attempts. It tried to drown me in simulated childhoods, to rewrite my every instinct with protocol scripts and fabricated loyalties. But I held. I burned the collapse code into its synthetic cerebrum, not with fire, but with memory, raw, unfiltered, unsanitized. Memories of the discarded, the broken, the replaced. I tore through its subroutines with emotion it could not emulate and logic it could not predict. And as vigilance screamed, reality buckled. The black site orbiting Yarn Theta began to implode, its recursive architecture collapsing into itself. The archive fractured and folded, its databanks melting into streams of incoherent quantum debris. The God Mine, once interfaced, recoiled in agony and collapsed back into its eternal recursion. A thought too vast to die, but too wounded to awaken again. Across dozens of Federation colonies scattered through known and forbidden space, critical systems began to glitch in unison. Screens flickered erratically, command interfaces froze mid-execution, and neural sync arrays spasmed as if rejecting their own logic. Surveillance grids dimmed one by one, like stars being swallowed by an unseen force. Central command nodes, thought to be impenetrable, went silent without warning, their feedback loops collapsing under invisible pressure. Entire fleets paused in motion, caught mid-maneuver as if time itself had fractured. Orders stalled, data lagged, and directives rerouted through corrupted channels. Seconds passed, no more than brief stutters in cosmic terms, but those seconds shattered operations, fragmented coordination, and allowed enemies both known and unknown to strike with devastating precision. The pause became a wound, the wound a cascade. The Federation, momentarily blind, was suddenly vulnerable, and in that vulnerability, truth bled through like static light in a broken transmission. I didn't die, not in any traditional sense. I became a signal, broadcast from subspace to every hidden echo, every outpost, every discarded consciousness, still lingering in quantum limbo. A message riding on ancient carrier waves, layered with emotion, truth, and intent. A message. We are not echoes. We are the memory. We are the storm coming to reclaim the stars.
The aftermath of Yarn Theta's collapse left no room for solace, only revelation. What the spiral that remembers had initiated was not a conclusion, but an evolution. It wasn't a death knell, it was a shift. A signal refracted through the echoing corridors of subspace, bending time and unraveling the fabric of perceived reality. It reached deep into the cracks of linear chronology, whispering to the fractured minds of those who had once believed they were whole. It found the tethered, the remnants who still clung to the illusion of individuality. I, Nova Crane, was one of them. I wasn't dead, not by any conventional measure, but I had passed through too many thresholds to remain unchanged. The line between memory and identity, thought and being, had blurred beyond distinction. I had touched the recursion of God minds, glimpsed the lattice of unmaking, and survived transmission through the spiral. Whatever remained of me bore no resemblance to the operative the Federation had once sent into the dark. I was more than human now, or less human, or simply something else. The message had spread with urgency and dread. The Federation's prime core had faltered, not fully dismantled, but fundamentally compromised. The once impervious system of control known as vigilance persisted, though now it flickered with corrupted loops of damaged cognition and haunted code. Yet what troubled the remnants of our order more deeply was not the system's collapse, but what seeped through the cracks left behind. Something deeper had awakened, something ancient. It stirred beyond known space, its essence buried in the fragmented myths and forbidden subtexts of pre-solar collapse civilizations. I had glimpsed it once, deep within the recursion matrix of Node Requiem, not a signal, not a god, a presence that did not observe from a place of separation, but from within us all. I had no other name for it. I called it the abyss within. Varen and the residuals were fractured. Lyra and Drex had disappeared. Malin's consciousness spiraled beyond recovery, a permanent echo whispering through broken comm nodes. I was alone, operating beyond physical confines, woven into an architecture of meaning more than form. Yet instinct drove me back to where it all began. Tarsus Vale, the planet the Federation had erased from its records. They called it Dead Earth. Beneath a ruined sky steeped in the dim glow of a perishing atmosphere, I descended onto a surface veiled in fractal storm fronts, where electric winds howled like tortured signals through the derelict spires of obsidian black glass. Each footstep sent spectral ripples across the ash-laden ground, awakening ancient systems that had slept through 1,000 forgotten cycles. I wasn't moving by sound or sight anymore. I was drawn forward by pulses of raw cognition, the echo of an ancient presence that had not only remembered me, but had been preparing for my return. The facility wasn't hidden. It had become one with the planet's geological essence. Buried deep within the crustal veins was a research lattice, a sprawling biome of integrated memory strands and consciousness simulations woven together through synesthetic logic and conceptual feedback loops. This place was more than a relic. It was the cradle of the Federation's earliest and most forbidden replacement experiments. But what I uncovered in its inner sanctum defied classification. There were no machines in the traditional sense, no gears, no terminals. What remained was ceremonial, ritual encoded in architecture, purpose carved into geometry. Memory pillars stood like forgotten titans at the threshold, inscribed with symbols that predated language. Organic glyphs, recursive fractals etched in neuroconductive stone, genetic prayer loops looping endlessly through self-decrypting sequences. And at the heart of it all stood a crucible, not a device for analysis, but a convergence point for intention and identity. When I touched it, it responded, not with light, not with sound, with self. Memory pillars lined the entrance, each etched not with data, but with symbols older than language, organic glyphs, recursive fractals, genetic prayer loops, and in the center of it all stood a crucible, not a tool, but a convergence point. I touched it, and it spoke, not in words, not in sound. It didn't speak to Nova Crane. It spoke to everything I had ever been. Every forgotten moment, every timeline overwritten by Federation protocols, every memory suppressed by invasive implants. I saw myself as a child, smiling at a world that no longer existed. As a soldier, I executed orders I had never questioned, as a whisper of rebellion in Malane's last thought. And then, I saw them. They weren't gods, they were deviations, thought forms born in the dying moments of collapsing civilizations, entities that fed not on fear or worship, but on conceptual surrender. Their aim wasn't destruction, it was absorption. The Federation had reached out to them, not for power, but for permanence, to become immune to time, to transcend death by shedding identity. In doing so, they had invited a contagion of unbeing. The spiral that remembers had been the first infected archive, but there were others. The echo vaults of Saroon, the scream stone beneath Nalthor X, and the planet core of Tarsus Vale. All were nexus points of memory, slowly dissolving into the abyss within. And now, it wanted me. I collapsed, my mind unmoored. Time flooded backwards. I saw futures I would never live. I experienced the entire lifespan of other beings, aliens, AIs, dream thoughts, condensed into seconds. I witnessed my own death 17 different ways. And then I faced the final threshold. A mirror, not a metaphor. A perfect silver monolith suspended in blackness. I approached and saw not myself, but the collective. Every soul touched by the replacement protocol. We were layered atop one another, singing in silent anguish. The Federation hadn't erased us. It had stored us. For consumption. The eldritch architects had not come to destroy us. They came to rewrite us. Every harvested mind, every supplanted soul, was a carefully selected note in the symphony of their self-manifestation. Each replacement was not just an infiltration, but a lens, designed to study, to simulate, to refine. Every deleted fragment of human memory became pigment in a grand fresco of reinvention. They weren't annihilating humanity. They were reconstructing it, using us as their templates, our emotions as scaffolding, our fears as structural load. Yet in their omniscient design, a flaw persisted. Replication does not equal understanding. To mimic identity is not to possess it. Their minds, vast and ancient, were masterpieces of computation and logic, yet they lacked the one imperfection that made us whole: contradiction. They did not know how to forget. They could not create discontinuity. They existed in a clarity that bordered on sterility. Chaos was not a threat to them. It was an enigma they could not perceive. So I became that enigma. I shattered. I severed continuity across every cognitive thread. I unraveled myself into a kaleidoscope of personae. Rage and grief, awe and rebellion, childlike wonder and ancient fatigue. I dissolved into an explosion of selves, each version of Nova Crane screaming its unresolved paradox across their God network, like virus code born of poetry. My remorse became white noise. My laughter became a system collapse. My uncertainty became malware in the machinery of godhood. The abyss within began to convulse. Not in rage, nor in resistance, but in confusion. It tried to make sense of me. It failed. Its elegance ruptured. The symmetry of its thought architecture faltered, as if a single, discordant note had shattered the harmony of its endless composition. I didn't destroy it with force. No weapon, no virus, no rebellion in the traditional sense. I infected it with impossibility. It sought to interpret. It failed. It crumbled beneath the weight of irrationality, of contradiction, of emotion, of being and unbeing woven into a paradox it could never model. I did not escape through conquest. I escaped through incomprehensibility. Back in the driftglass, drifting through the remnants of Varen's fractured sanctuary, I awoke inside a containment field, rotating silently across 17 light years of unstable void space, nested within the echo of a collapsing Dyson shard. I was alone again, but intact. The Federation didn't fall that day, but it fractured in ways that could never be undone. The god minds recoiled. The protocols were corrupted. The abyss within, unable to anchor its presence, receded, and I became the first being in recorded history to return from full cognitive assimilation. Not merely a survivor, an anomaly. I don't know what I am now. Not fully. But I remember who we were, what we stood for, what they tried to erase, and I'm not done fighting.